Welcome to our first Books and Beverages of 2024. And this one we're calling Between the Covers, where we'll basically be discussing us the members of Books and Beverages. So we're going to go through sort of why we write, our interests in publishing, sort of the highs and lows of our experiences, and then we're going to be talking about what we hope to achieve with Books and Beverages, the group, and what we can sort of do for authors. And then we'll be discussing a little bit about our festival in the summer. Sorry if this mic fades in and out, it's a very sensitive range here. So just to start with, the three of us are the three volunteers for Books and Beverages UK. So on my left is Sue Williams, on my right Kate Swann, and my name's Edwin Rydberg. We do have a website, booksandbeveragesus.wordpress.com, and we also, as you can see, everything is being recorded for our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and you search using the handle @Books and Beverages UK, you'll find our page. So I guess since I have the mic, I'll start with myself in terms of my sort of journey to writing. My name is Edwin Rydberg. I write primarily science fiction, and you can find my fiction at alternatefutures.co.uk. I also write children's picture books under my pen name Harry Redhouse, and that's harryredhouse.com as well. I basically, my earliest writing was when I was a kid. I did a comic book. It was a space science or space James Bond kind of thing, but I think I was inspired by Star Wars. But mostly I started writing poetry when I was in university, so I'm a biochemist by training. And that was sort of as a way of releasing emotions. Poetry is a great way of expressing your emotions and sort of getting them out there. And then it was only when I sort of went to my first postdoctoral position that I met a guy who was interested in science fiction. He sort of convinced me to start writing fiction as well. So I started writing science fiction then, sort of to get some of the stories in my head down on paper. I think that's mostly what most authors do. They're trying to get those stories out. I think the beginning of the journey, though, was a bit ironic because I was writing my thesis, and it was a 200-page tome, basically. And I was like, I realized, like a lot of scientists, people doing their PhDs, publish their work, and I realized, like, I had no idea how to finish a book like that and to get it published, and that was sort of a light bulb moment for me. And so I think that sort of was the beginning of my journey into publishing, because I'm also a publisher. I do assisted self-publishing, another plug for myself, at quantum.press.com. That was the beginning of that journey, so I moved to Italy. Before moving to Italy, I'll skip ahead a few steps. When I was still in the lab in Israel, I got a lot of writing-related work from the lab, doing promos, because my English was the best in the lab. So I was doing the promos and a lot of correction of journals. So I just basically got more and more into writing and a little bit actually less into science, to be honest. And then in Israel, from Israel I went to Italy. My wife's Italian. And from there, two of us in the lab entered back-to-back years this science writing competition for short stories, for publicizing a scientific issue to lay people, so at a sort of general public level, and we each won back-to-back, so that was kind of an inspiration as well. And so then cue a lot of life changes, and I started writing more seriously when I got involved in a group online called writing.com. It was a big organization at the time. And then I finished, I did NaNoWriMo, which we did. Who was the one who interviewed?
It was Angela.
Yeah, so it was you interviewed?
Yeah,
So we did an interview, I think it was in November, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Angela Wren, we were talking about NaNoWriMo, so the National Novel Writing Month. So in 2006, actually, that was the first time I entered this, and I managed to succeed that time. And from there I got inspired for a while and I finished 3 novels in about a year and a half. And then I basically shifted direction both in my life and in my sort of writing publishing career. But I'll leave you on that hook, and I'll pass it on to Kate for now.
Thank you, Edwin. Can you hear me? Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm Kate Swann. Well, if my mother was here, she'd insist it was Kathleen, my given name, but I'm known as Kate. I write, or have written, in 2 different genres. My real love is writing poetry, and I started doing that for the school magazine when I was at grammar school, and I used to prolifically write poems for the beginning, the middle and the end of the school magazine. I'm not sure any of those poems would make it into one of my books now, but it was a love kindled that I wanted to go on and do more of. And so I've always written poetry to some degree, even when I was writing the sort of ditties at work for people who were leaving or pregnant or moving to a new job. But I didn't really have time when I was at work to settle down and learn about the craft of writing poetry. So when I retired, I did a course through the Open University and just loved learning about how to write poetry. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 12 years. I have put together one book of poems, which was published, I think now it must be 5 years ago, but I am working on another book at the moment. I go to lots of poetry groups, both reading and writing poetry. And I'm not sure where the ideas come from, but when they hit you, they hit you. And it goes round your head till you have to get it out on paper. But I'm not the sort of poet that can sit down and just write a poem for the sake of. I struggle with that. If I go to a workshop and somebody gives me a line and says, write a poem, I stare at the paper for ages and it just doesn't work. But if I sit on a bus and hear somebody say 2 or 3 words that suddenly strike me as a poetic line, then that's when it starts to go round in my head until it's really 4 or 5 lines, and then I can sit down and work on it. Then I can make it into a poem. So it's not something that's easy to explain about how you do it. It just happens. And I've tried over all these years, I've tried to sort of think, what is it that fires me up and sets me off? Don't know. It's those few words, it's that headline in a newspaper, it's something your grandchildren say, it's just one of those things that suddenly you think, there's a poem in that. But the other thing that I wrote, dear me, what awful English. The other thing that I have produced was a book about my mother's life, my mother and my grandmother. When my mother died, I felt bereft, but also I felt that for her 97 years, she had struggled through so many different things. She had become an amazing woman over those years, and yet her childhood had been as horrific as anything you could imagine. As poor and as hard-working, she worked from the age of 9 to earn money so that they could live. And I felt that had to be written down. But I wanted it to be positive, and I wanted it to be about her and her mother, but also the other people that crossed through her life. And I started to do some work on ancestry, family history, work on ancestry, looking up the dates, looking up about the rest of the family, her sisters, her brother, her half-sisters, her step-sisters, all the people that made the family that ultimately, towards the end of her life, she got to know and got to love, because it was a long journey for her to know all her family. So Ancestry set me off, and of course it introduces you to newspapers and to other ways of looking for information, so that you find out about what it was like in the early 1920s, when times were hard, when there was the flu epidemic, all through the end of that First World War, all through the difficulties, through the Depression in the 30s, and then through the Second World War. So I read a lot of historical information and pulled it all together into a book about my mother's life. I think the sadness is that, of course, she never knew. It would have been, I think, nice for her to know that her life had been documented, because she talked about it a lot. She talked to me about her life and her times and her hardships, but she was always positive in saying, but look where I've got to now, look what I can do now. So for the lack of education that she had as a child, because she was the one who had to look after the new babies in the family, she couldn't always go to school. She actually did manage to do her NVQ in pharmacy assistance at the age of 81. She passed with flying colours. Determination. So it's a shame that she never knew how much I documented all that down. But that's two different styles of writing. One is very much imaginative. One is very much about using your imagination and creating a story in as few words as possible to make people think differently about something in the poetry. And the other one's very factual, very much about finding the facts, getting it right, looking it up, much more research work. So they're two very different things, but I've loved doing them both. But I shall go back to the poetry now, and I shall work on my poetry and do another poetry book. And now I'll hand over to Sue.
Thank you. For those who don't know me, I'm Sue Williams. I'm the third one of the Books and Beverages. Now, I have to say, I cannot write poetry. I love poetry, I love listening to poetry, I love reading poetry. But some would say to me, write a poem, and it's like, duh, I just can't do it. Prose is my thing. How did I get into it? I had to ask my husband, because I thought, well, how did I start writing? And he said, you've always written. And we have been married a very long time. And when I thought about it, yes, I have. And in my work life, I used to have to write assessments, reports about people that they had to recognise themselves, but also lay out the facts about these people. So I did an awful lot of that. So I suppose that was a really good grounding for when I retired and could actually say, I'm going to write. But actually it's a lot more difficult sometimes than you think, because when I was at college as a mature student, a friend and I decided we were going to write a bodice ripper, 1990s. This was the era of heaving bosoms and bodice rippers, for those who remember it. And we thought, it's got to be easy. Well, we got a fantastic plot based on a real life event in Yorkshire. Moved a few centuries, but that's nothing. And I think for us, one, our writing styles are completely different, because to write with somebody else, that's quite a challenge. But the other thing for me is I couldn't get my head into who the characters were. Now, I have written fiction, I've written various different bits and pieces. And my last book, about 5 ladies who get up to mischief, I can see them, I can tell you about them, they are so real to me. If they walk down the stairs over there, I'd say, hi Marjorie, or whichever one it was, because they are so real. But our first book, it just didn't take it off like that. I've also written textbooks, but they're not useful but not very exciting, you might think. and I have contributed to anthologies. But I think I just like writing. It's sometimes you turn around and you read something you've written, especially if you've left it for a little while and gone back to it, and you think, oh, did I write that? That sounds right. And other times you think, oh my God, that's dreadful. Go. So I think that's how I sort of slid into writing. It was never a conscious career path. I left school quite young. Certainly for girls from my background, there were no jobs in journalism or teaching or anything like that. I've made up for it since, but that was how it was then. So yeah, that's how I got into writing, and that's how I think I stayed into writing.
So I guess now we're going to sort of share a little bit of our highs and lows with our writing and specifically publishing, I think, because writing is, I think when you're doing the writing, initially the first book is a work of love usually, and then you get the book out and you don't really, you just want to see the book basically, and then you start working on further books and trying to think, how am I going to get people to read this? And that's when sort of the actual real hard work starts, as many of the authors in the audience I'm sure know. So perhaps I was going to ask Sue, since she's the sort of newest one to publishing at least, perhaps to share some of her highs and lows on the journey she's been on so far.
Thank you. Oh, well, bless his little cotton socks. Edwin has tried so hard over the years to get me focused on things like marketing. Because if you want to hear what is the real low of publishing, it's not when you've got your book, that's fantastic. It's getting out there and sharing it with people, and that is really, really difficult. And I don't know if that goes for all of us or many of us, but we're not desperately good at standing out there and saying, whoa, look at me. I have to say, Edwin's Canadians, and I'm not sure if they're quite a modest bunch, but certainly the Americans, if you meet them, they're very gung-ho, aren't they? And they can sell you everything and the American dream and whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, do I have to do this? And for me, that's the really difficult bit. I think the other low, and I'm sure the others will agree, and people who write, it's that dreadful part when you've got in a book and you've flowed along and it's gone really well, and then you think, oh my God, I can't do this. I've lost the thread, it's not working, and you stare at a blank piece of paper. And I'm so old-fashioned that I actually have to write word by word on paper, and then I'll transfer it to the laptop. So, and it's like looking at that blank piece of paper and thinking, well, what can I talk about? What can the characters do? And I've started the second book about my 5 ladies, who are elderly ladies who get up to all sorts of mischief. It's what I'm going to do when I get old. Drinking, partying, going out with strange gentlemen. Sorry, dear. Just having a wonderful time, and I think that should be a blueprint of all of our old ages. And I've started the second book. All planned out, right to the end, where the ladies are triumphant yet again, with a little bit of dodgy dealing. But actually sitting down and that real effort of sitting down and the slog, because sometimes writing, much as you love it, can be a real slog because you want it to all get together. But then you think of the highs, and I think the highs are very much, you've got a book, hey, I've got a book. Actually, I've got a few, but you know, that particular one, that's fun. And I love writing comedy. So that's great. There are surprisingly few writers out there who write, there are a number, but there aren't as many comic writers out there as you would think there would be, or I haven't found them. So there you go. But that is, you know, that is the real high. And the other real high is when people that aren't your families and friends, and they bought the book because they say you really need to put buy my book, but when complete strangers come and say, I loved your book, when's the next one coming out? And that's a real high, because you think, well, they're no attachment to me, they're not trying to be nice to me, but they've actually enjoyed what I've produced. And I suspect for all writers, that's a real joy.
Kate, what was your experiences then?
I think the very first high was, and I was at a poetry workshop, and I'd taken a poem that I'd started to write and been working on it whilst we were in the workshop and got one or two ideas. And at the end we had to read our poems out, and I read my poem out, and another lady in the group said, oh, I could publish that in Poetry Scotland. And I thought, wow, somebody's actually going to publish a poem of mine that other people are going to read. Wow! That was the very first high, and that was the thing that made me go, oh, maybe I can do this again. Maybe it works. So that was definitely the start of my sending poems off, sending them out for submission. Some of them got published, some of them didn't. Sometimes people accept them. And the one thing that irritated me was that somebody accepted one and then changed it. And that was a real low. I was really cross about that. But it's when somebody else reacts to your work that you just think, ooh, yeah, that's good. Wow. Because although I love writing, and there is a satisfaction in doing it for yourself when you really think, yes, I like that, it's good. So much better when somebody else likes it. And as Sue says, when it's not your husband or your mother or your sister, you know, I mean, when it's somebody else and you think, oh, yeah, they like what I do, that's good. So yes, those are definitely the highs. And getting your first book in your hand when the box arrives on the doorstep and you take the book out and you think, wow, I did that. Yeah, those are real highs. But then when you're sitting writing and it just doesn't work, and you just can't, for the love of you, get it to sound right, you can't get it to gel, you can't get the syllables right in the line. And I don't write in rhymes, so that's occasionally, but not often. And I don't write very much in poetic form, if you know what I mean. I don't write villanelles or sestinas or things like that. And generally, it's free written poetry. But when you just can't get it right, you think, can't do this. If I can't do it now, I'll never do it. Never get it right. You shove it in a drawer, you walk away. Maybe you don't come back to it, certainly days, possibly weeks. And that's disheartening, because that's when you want to be able to just finish it off. You want something finished and done. So yeah, those are the lows. I was very fortunate with my first book that, again, someone that I knew in a poetry group offered to publish the book for me, and that was great. And then again with my second book, Edwin, our lifesaver, gave us lots of help, gave me lots of help, and helped me to get the book about my mother published. So the publishing hasn't, although it's hard work, it hasn't been a trauma to me on either of the books. Yes, there have been frustrations. There are photographs in the book about my mother, and I could not get these photographs in the right place, and I could not get the legend underneath the photographs in the right place. And I am a bit of a perfectionist, and if it doesn't look right, I'm not happy. So, yeah, those are frustrations, but I wouldn't say that was a low, really. I think that's just the hard work, because it is hard work, it doesn't come easy, and there's a lot of effort goes into it.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, I can concur on a lot of what they've said. I have some things, let's say, sitting in the drawer almost 20 years now, I think. It's not because I don't like it, it's just because I don't know where to go with it. So it's like, it's about half written, basically. highs again. So I won the Europe-wide short story competition, and that was a high that sort of kicked off my interest. Finishing the first draft of my first novel during the NaNoWriMo, that was quite a high. I was like, oh, maybe I can do this. And then I did sort of drop out of writing for quite a while. So I joined a York writing critique group and sort of sat there waiting for them to critique the novels, and probably just sort of waited a bit too long. But while I was doing that, I was, again, with the writing.com group. It was a very vibrant community, writing a lot of short stories, and I thought, these are great stories these people have written, someone should publish these. And I thought, well, maybe someone should be me. So that was sort of the beginning of my journey and my bit of segue into publishing, so it's the self-publishing industry. And so from there, we won't show the first one I published because, your first one you often make a lot of mistakes and didn't have any good guides. So, but after the first one, I kind of got the publishing bug, and so I did publish 2 more anthologies. These were submitted of stories submitted from authors around the world, and so one is a crime fiction anthology, which has been recently reviewed on our website. Yeah. Thanks to Sue. And next one is a speculative fiction anthology. And through these anthologies, I also got the digital art bug, so that's another distraction from my writing. So I was still involved in the writing groups and a bit of writing, but I'd segued into really the publishing side of things. And so I started then going digital artwork for quite a while. I sold some of the artwork at genre conventions and things like that, before eventually coming back to publishing in 2015 when I started Quantum Dot Press, the assisted self-publishing company, where I've worked with Sue and Kate. And then I've finally come back to my own writing again, sort of revising and combining all the various stories. So I have sitting about half a dozen mostly written stories. And so I do agree, you get that point. And in my very first novel that I was writing, I hit that point where everything was going well, and then it just, there was no path forward. I didn't see where the story was going. So I paused that one and went and finished a few others, and I have come back to them quite late. But I do concur that one of the highs for me is publishing books. And I just like to see the books in the final sort of created product, and so that's why I do the assisted self-publishing, because I can't do my own books fast enough. So, so I work on other people's books. And then in addition to that, of course, I got interested in, when I started seeing authors, I got interested in the challenge that they have, not only with publishing, but also with marketing. As we've said, that's one of the big challenges. So I co-founded Promoting Yorkshire Authors, which some of you are aware of. And out of that came Books and Beverages, the first iteration, which was pre-COVID. And then it paused for COVID, and it kind of, I thought it was going to die for a while, but I did kind of feel like starting it up again when I was talking with the library. And so that kind of brings us from my journey into Books and Beverages itself, and that little segue there. And when I started, when I went to restart Books and Beverages, I realized I couldn't do it myself. I knew all the work that went into it before, and finding the authors, and then you have to schedule them, then you have to. I do most of the tech stuff. Let's say I do all the tech stuff.
You do all the tech stuff.
But so I was thinking, okay, if I'm the tech person primarily, I need other people to do the other stuff. Let's say be in front of the cameras and to help find the authors. And so I happened to be working with Sue and Kate at the time on their books. And so I roped them into the project. And so I'll let them sort of share their opinion on that in a moment. So basically, just to sort of briefly, what we're hoping to do with Books and Beverages is sort of giving a stepping stone for authors into the world of promotion and marketing. So it's a friendly atmosphere in a local library where you can sort of get your toes wet in the pond of promotion. without any harsh judgments. We do put you on YouTube, so if you're an author who's up here, but that's less harsh perhaps than sometimes trying to be on BBC or something. So that is sort of what we're hoping to do. We're being very happy to partner with Harrogate Library, who've been very supportive of our projects as well. And I think we did help them. I think helped them win the award for Best Library of the Year in 2019 as well. So they're very happy with that, and they've been very happy to partner with us. And so they've been valuable in, especially, I think many of you have booked a spot here on Eventbrite, and so you've been made aware of our programs via Eventbrite, via the library, so that's been very good. I will plug one more time our sites before I pass it on to the others to share their experiences. But you can find sort of our recordings at booksandbeveragesuk.wordpress.com, or again, if you search on YouTube with the handle at Books and Beverages UK. If you are an author who wants to be up here, interviewed by one of my two lovely assistants,
what a creep!
then you can email us at booksandbeveragesuk@gmail.com, and I'll let them have their revenge now.
Thank you, Edwin. We do interview authors. Actually, the first one that we did back in 2022 when everything was opening up, Kate interviewed me about my book, and the following month I interviewed you, didn't I? So it was a sort of, we could drag family and friends to that to sort of build up our audience. But for me, one of the things about independent authors, there's some fantastic books out there, and you never know about them. So part of this is promoting the works of independent authors. Because we talk to authors and different authors, we hear about their work. I'm just reading Sue Fisher's book, Mystique and Investigate, which she came and talked to us back in September about research for historical novels. Very good so far. I'm only about one chapter in, but I find it really, really interesting. Now, if Sue hadn't come over from Skipton to talk about her book, I would never have known about it. And I think, sadly, so many of our books, getting it out there, if you're not a celebrity, is really, really tough. And yet there's some fantastic books. But to go back to marketing, one of the things Edwin has done, and I think Kate and I were his guinea pigs, he was sort of putting together a marketing course, because our first sort of proper fiction books we wanted to promote. And we're independent authors, we go around, we talk to people about books. But what has been interesting about Books and Beverages, we've had authors who have gone the traditional route. They've got agents, they've got publishers, and they seem to work just as hard on the marketing and the promotion as those of us who are independent, which quite surprised me, because I thought, well, if you've got an agent and you've got a publisher, they'll do all that for you. Well, not a chance. You're still required to do an awful lot of it yourself, and that's really, really tough. Other thing I do for Books and Beverages, which I just completed a whole year of, is I review books every year. It's a very odd mix. I review books I like, books I picked up from the library or the charity shops, well-known authors, but I also like reviewing independent authors. And Edwin asked, would I review Assassin's Canon? Well, I'm not really into gory crime, but I love the idea that this book was about writing about killing from the assassin's point of view. So that was different. So the other thing I really loved was there was a section on microfiction, doing a whole story in 50 words. Now that is mind-blowing. That's like poetry on speed, that is. In fact, if you dig it out, I'll read one to you. And these are the things we can promote in Books and Beverages. But for myself, it's the first one. You're the very first one. That's the best one. Thank you to my glamorous assistant. and it's called Lowdown. 50 words story. My target goes down, I head home. I find Janet dead, hear Mikey crying. A shot kneecaps me, shooter is low. Mikey, I hiss, hide. I take one in the chest, it's Mikey with my Glock. You should have got me the weed, Daddy. He doesn't waver, just aims. I'm so proud. Fabulous. I would have never have read that ordinarily, which is why I do my blog. Because if I just reviewed all the books that I like to read, you would get a diet of cosy crime, because I don't really like terribly gruesome stuff, historical fiction, that sort of thing. But because I like to review broader, and I like where I can to review independent authors, that's great for me. And we're building up a bit of a, people are reading them and commenting, and occasionally we argue. I reply and argue in the comments. But again, it's all about the books, and I think that's a really important thing. Books are wonderful. However you read them, whether you read it on a Kindle, whether you read it from a library book, or as I shall be doing tomorrow, trawling around the charity shops of Knaresborough to see if there's anything good that I can pick up for £1, and there quite often is. I picked up the latest Robert Harris, Oblivion, in a charity shop. I think if it's been read at all, it's been read once, hardback, perfect condition, and it cost me the princely sum of £1. Can't be beaten. Apart from the library, of course, which is free, and that's even better. I've obviously lived in Yorkshire too long. So with that, I will pass over to Kate.
And I just wanted to add that Sue's single-handedly keeping our website populated with her reviews. But I'm sure that if there are any independent authors here, she'd be happy to review your book. I'm speaking for her, of course.
That's very kind of you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a great believer in books and reading. When I first left school, I worked in the library, and I worked on the children's library van. And we took the books round, it was the county of Westmoreland in those days, and we took the books round the county to children in schools, and I loved it. And I loved seeing children's faces when they found a book they wanted to read, or when they were persuaded to take a book, brought it back and said, that was good, find me another one as good as that. So yes, I'm absolutely sold on reading from the earliest age possible in books. But I think when I started to do Books and Beverages, I think it actually appealed to my nosy nature. I think that was the bit. Because actually, there's nothing quite like finding out about why other people do what you do, or why other people sit down at 5 o'clock in the morning to write, or 10 o'clock at night to write, or go into the shed at the bottom of the garden to write, or what it is that people do. And it really appealed to my nosy nature to know what it was that made other authors want to write, and how they did it, where they did it. Did they do it on technology, or did they, like Sue, on paper and pen? I can only write with a 2B pencil, I have to say. Anything else won't do. So we all have these funny quirks, and sitting talking to people about it just appealed to my nosy nature, really, just to find out what it was. Were they the same as me in the way that they wrote? Did they have a tip that perhaps would help me to be able to get over that stumbling block when you're too tired, or you need another cup of coffee, or whatever it is? What was it that made other people write, and how did they do it? And I've loved talking to people, listening to people, finding out just how it is that they deal with this strange obsession for writing. So that's been really, really, really good fun all through the year. Marketing's a different thing altogether. And you'll never get rich writing poetry. I don't think even the top poets are rich. They make money, they make a living. They're not like J.K. Rowling. You know, Salmon Armitage does not live the lifestyle that J.K. Rowling lives. I'm sure he's very comfortable, thank you. But poetry is not your popular thing. Not everybody doesn't leap to a poetry book. So it's hard work to sell it. I love being asked to go and do readings. I love being asked to go and talk about it. I love being given the opportunity to read out what I've written. Not everybody likes everything I write, I'm sure, but I love the opportunity to do it. But it's a hard slog to get out there and do it. And of course, the more time you're out there reading it and talking about it, you're not sitting at home writing it. So it's getting that balance between the two. So yes, marketing is hard work, and I'm not sure that even many of the top agents do all the selling. I think all authors have to get out there and do something themselves. But it's good fun. I wouldn't want it any other way, really.
Can I make a comment?
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you. I really too haven't got any germs, you know, I'm going to come down with something nasty. I think there's something else I would like to say about Books and Beverages. When you're actually writing, you're sitting at, well, on my dining room table in my case, unless you're posh and got a study. It's quite a lonely process a lot of the time. It's just you and your laptop or your pen and paper or whatever. But I have found that writers are a very social group. Once you get together with them, we all chat like mad, which is great, but it does rather interfere with the process of writing. But hey, I really love that side. And of course, Books and Beverages, I've met lots of other authors, and that's really lovely. And the other thing, of course, which these two haven't mentioned, but we can tell our incredulous friends and family, well, of course, I'm a star of YouTube. And they look at me and go, what? But it's good fun.
Yes, we'll make you a celebrity yet.
You better get working on it.
So I guess maybe to that end, we wanted to also sort of share with you one of our big projects for the summer we're working on, which is the Alternative Crime Writing Festival, a free alternative crime writing festival. So I'd like to sort of have Sue kind of introduce the idea and what we're about with regards to that.
Okay. Well, definitely a date for your diary, 4th to 7th of July, and we are currently putting together the programme. For those of you who were here last July, we did a crime authors session on a Saturday as a special. And we had a wonderful audience. You were all wonderful, of course, but we had a very big audience, which obviously the downside of Fridays is a lot of people who work and can't come here. And we sort of thought, well, our authors, who are all independent, are every bit as good as a lot down at the Old Swan, for which they charge a fortune. So we've decided, rashly, to have our own alternative crime writing festival. Now, I have to say, I have been in and sent an email to the posh lot down the road to say, this is what we're doing, we're not trampling on your toes, but we're here. And as is alternative, first of all, there will be a whole series of talks, and I think we're even going to have a workshop. I'm looking, Susanna was here somewhere. Susanna rashly offered to host a crime writing workshop, so that'd be fantastic. I will be there. We will do events, author events, talking about their work, different perspectives. We're still in the process of sort of planning it out. And even coffee meetups, which we haven't quite got sorted yet. I haven't been to enough coffee shops, that's my problem, to do my research. So that's what it's going to be. It's alternative because it's free. We're very, very lucky. Not only Harrogate Library are supporting us with it, but also Knaresborough Library, Bilton Library and Starbeck, so we can go round different areas, we will be hosting talks. The big talk, of course, will be here in Harrogate, which is our home. But that's really exciting, and we've already got authors signed up to come along and help and read and do all sorts.
Yes, we do. We have currently around 10 or so authors already signed up. So for a 3-day event, that's pretty good. If you are an author potentially interested, we do have this nice forum. You can check out more details with the QR code. We're also looking for volunteers, anyone who would like to help out, organize, plan the events. Obviously, there's only 3 of us, and we have 4 libraries to cover over 3 days. So I'm specifically looking for any tech help, anyone who's tech savvy. I can't be recording every event over the course of the 3 days. But if you'd just like to help meet and greet or anything like that, we'd love to have you help with the festival. More information, as I said, can be found through the QR code here or on our website. We're also, in conjunction with the festival, we're open for submissions to an anthology. So we're doing a short crime fiction anthology, similar to the one that Sue was plugging earlier. And that's open to short fiction, microfiction, and poetry. You can submit 1 piece of each if you want. The deadline is officially January 31st. And again, you can find more information on this form here. There's another QR code to give you some more details. I guess with that, I'll pass it over to Kate and see if she has anything else she'd like to add.
No, I was going to say about the anthology, really, but no, I don't think I have anything else to say, unless anybody has any questions. I just say thank you very much for coming and listening to us, because it's been great. It's been lovely talking to you all, and if you've got any questions, please ask.
Yes, so we do our events generally on the first Friday of every month. We do have authors booked through now to July, so feel free to come by each month. But as Kate said, if there are any questions, definitely we're happy to take any questions right now, or you can talk to us later as well.
The only thing I'd like to mention is we both tried to sign up to help at the festival, and it just didn't work. We both tried several times and got nowhere. So
All right.
I don't know if there's a glitch
It
on the
says
system.
the email address didn't exist.
Okay.
He's a
All
techie
right.
guy.
I'll have a look.
Fingers.
Yeah, point here.
Yeah, point here.
It took you to the website, or just
Well,
off the
we
look for the
Scanned
website?
the code.
Okay.
We scanned the code and both independently tried to sign up, and
Okay.
it just but it wouldn't recognise your email address.
Oh.
Well, that's interesting. I'll go
I
check
tried
that.
2 or
then,
3
anyways.
times and it just
Right,
wouldn't
thanks
work.
for letting me know. We can sign you up today if you are happy, definitely. Yes. Is there any other questions then?
It's not so much a question. Is there any chance of Kate giving us an example of her poetry? It's been interesting hearing you talk about it.
Right.
I can try and hold it for you. If
Yeah.
you want.
I've not been so
Okay,
I
let
can
me.
have a book if you want.
No, it's
All right.
absolutely fine. I'm just trying to decide
sorry.
what to. I know now. What do I read? Okay, this is one of the oldest poems, if you like. I must have written this particular poem about 15 years ago, I think, and it came about because I just was remembering a childhood, time in a childhood, and I just seen someone who reminded me of this guy, and this is called Tommy. He passed our house several times a day, steel-tipped clogs clinking on the metalled road. Long, slow strides carrying his thin frame at an angle, head bowed like a meditating monk. He looked so old we felt we couldn't count his years. Parched skin stretched over sharp-boned cheeks, blue-black shadows under cavernous eyes. We stood pressed to the wall as he passed, not daring to breathe or speak, in case he turned his head to look at us. The pungent smell shadowing him wrinkled our noses, but we stood stock still. We knew he slept in a corrugated barn, with his cow and dog for warmth. Some days he drove the cow up the road. Often he carried a bale of hay on his back, his bony shoulders and legs wrapped in rough sacking, tied with baler twine. They said he kept money under the straw. He marked the seasons through our childhood, but I can't remember when we stopped noticing him.
Is there any other questions? If not, then thank you once again for coming, and we hope to see you at the next events. And if you'd like to talk to us afterwards, feel free to come up. Thanks again.